Hi, I'm Adam.
And I'm Brian.
And we are Drinking in the Basement. So Brian, you had a good time in our last episode?
That was fun.
Well, this is going to be an extra special episode because we have an audience and
a special guest.
And we also have Brian helping us out with the camera again.
So we're going up market, upscale.
Yeah, so we're going to have a little bit of a better video this time, yes.
And we shouldn't be growing throughout the video.
No, that was Dylan, who's also here watching us.
Learn.
So what are we coming up at the store?
July 30th, Saturday, 1 to 5 is the Hot Dog Festival, also the summer tasting.
That's true. That's right. And we have beer,
wine, and spirits.
And it's going to be a huge event. There'll be I'd get there early because it's going to be very crowded. Just before we introduce our guest, we have another viewer question.
Can't wait.
Well, as you know, the last question was to Brian. So now the same question's been asked of me. And unlike Brian, who I hope was answering
facetiously.
Let's hope so. I'll answer that it's briefs or boxer briefs. All right, so with that,
does anybody want to know that?
I don't know. These are viewer questions. What do you want from me? All right, so let's go on to our guest for today.
Okay.
All right, so as you can see, we've had to adjust our set because we're going to have several people up here today.
Anyone from a prior episode know why that chair is over there? We'll get to that in a minute.
All right, so if you can answer why this chair is here, 10% off anything that we're tasting tonight.
That's a big deal.
And I don't even have all the pricing on all this stuff, so...
It could be a big deal.
It could be
if you call in the next 5 minutes.
That's from Brian. Now, it'll be easy. So it'll be easy to identify everybody because everybody here is named either Brian or Adam.
If you're not sure, just say, hey, you.
That's all right. There's Brian H., who's filming us again. So now, without further ado...
Full house, Brian's over Adam.
That's true. Without further ado, our special guest, a Scotch expert, another man who goes commando, Brian D. Come on out, Brian. Audience.
Hello, how are you? How are you?
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
And then we also have a friend of mine who is passionate about scotches and hockey. I will say no more. Adam Reback. If you need any legal advice, this is your man.
I'm back.
There you go. There you go. All right, Brian, why don't you take us through? We're going to be tasting scotches today, obviously.
Yep. Well, okay, today we're going to do a couple of different things. We're going to do, to start with, 4 different single malt scotches. And then after we taste these 4 different single malt scotches, we're then going to take a brief hiatus, imaginary trip down to Tasmania, the land down under, and we're going to try 3 different, what they call Tasmanian single malt whiskey. So that being said, let's start Speyside Distillery, 12 years old. We only make 86 barrels a week, all by hand, no computers. The neat part about this is that when you taste this whiskey, and please make sure you add a drop of water to it after you taste it straight, because it's done at 86 proof with no filtering. Done on the, you know, a tiny bit of filtering, but the 86 proof, it is kosher certified for purity. That's the main reason that we did it. It's just an example of purity. Aged in bourbon barrel for 12 years. This is done, needless to say, for the 12 years in a bourbon barrel, so it's a perfect crossover whiskey. The guy who likes bourbon whiskeys, a lot of the time you'll get them to enjoy this whiskey because it's a great single malt that appeals to a bourbon drinker.
Because it's kosher, does that mean on the 8th day of the whiskey, its foreskin was removed?
No, actually, the reason is
no longer thirsty.
It's exposed strictly only to bourbon barrel versus a port barrel or a wine barrel or a sherry barrel. In all honesty, the grain itself is intrinsically considered kosher accepted, and that's why beer is naturally considered kosher accepted. But where we take that next step is what we age the product in, hence why typical Macallan product cannot be called kosher in any way, shape, or form because it has exposure to some sherry product aging.
It reminds me of Macallan's,
all right, so now this sells for $35 or so, I think?
$35 to $40, depending upon the marketplace.
It's very good.
Thank you.
and reasonably priced.
Yeah, well, we try hard.
If you go a little past on this one, at least it's you know, in the $30 to $40 range.
Yeah.
On these ones coming up, you don't want to go past where you want to drink because these are the real deal.
Now, this next one is Auchentoshan. Auchentoshan is a lowland imaginary line from Edinburgh to Glasgow. Anything south of that line is a lowland whiskey. This has no peat exposure at all in the grain. It is extremely floral, heathery, slightly perfumey and natural notes. The whiskey is 21 years of age, and the alcohol proof after 21 years of age is 104.8 proof. So, with that being said,
Doesn't matter whether I box
As you can
As you
see, there's no caramel added to this. Sometimes you have like real dark
there's
scotches
no color, there's no filtering,
because they add
nothing.
caramel to it to make it look what they would think of as heavier or more flavorful. But this is how it comes out in the barrel.
When they do it this way, they're actually calling it cask strength. And the purpose of a cask strength whiskey is to expose you to what the distillery was offering on that exact day, with no marrying of other barrels, with no anything to it. It's barrel to bottle non-stop. As a result of that, and the beauty of it, because they're doing it that way, the benefit is that you're tasting the whiskey unaltered.
It's almost the same, but the flour part of it is almost similar to what I almost get in a wine,
Okay?
with some butter.
Huge amount of perfume notes to it. This is the closest that you'll ever get to an Irish whiskey from Scotland.
God, it feels good on the tongue too.
Excuse me.
Nice burn.
Yeah, oh, that's great.
The other
Very
thing
smooth
is,
and creamy.
Is Auchentoshan now the last of the lowlands
well,
around?
there's three.
What else
There's
is
three
there?
current ones that are in existence today. You've got Bladnoch, which is an on-again, off-again distillery.
Right.
Okay, and I'll get into what that means in a minute. You've got Auchentoshan, and you have Glenkinchie.
I just want to make a note that Brian actually didn't finish his because he's a little worried about the number that we have here. So in a first, Brian has chosen not to finish his glass. I can't believe it.
It's the first of DITV.
It's a first. I think it's
I
a
know,
first ever.
With the lowland,
Did
I
they do that
don't
with the
think
beer,
you need to have
the
water
Pabst?
to this.
Try a drop or
Never.
two, add it, and then
Old
try it
Milwaukee, or
again.
was that
You'll
you?
be amazed at what you're able to offer.
finish the
You
mic.
always want on cask strength whiskeys or anything 86 proof or higher. So 86, 92, or cask strength. You always want to add a couple of drops of water.
Now this one I definitely liked it better with the water.
And the way I
Yeah,
describe
tones
it,
down a little
We need
bit.
to add a couple drops of scotch though at this point.
Are you asking for more?
There's more
Politely.
coming. There's more coming. So let's go to
the
next.
reason that I always
Yeah, relax. You
recommend
got a bunch of them here.
Yeah, you
you
got a
gotta
bunch.
drive home, buddy.
the reason that I always
I
recommend
need to go back to the hotel with the guy with the killed.
Oh,
the reason that I always recommend that you add water to these is because it wakes up the whiskey, much like waking up a baby that's sleeping for the first time. You want to, slap its ass a little bit and wake it up. So give it some flavor profile. So it's
Relax.
that's the
That's a Facebook status. Slap its ass.
and wake it up.
So
By the sixth
I
or
love
seventh bottle, you may be slapping my ass actually.
all right. So what do we have next? Here,
So
I'm
the
gonna
next
bring it
one
up.
we're going to have, this is Glenlivet, 1977. This is 27 years aged in one barrel. This is a cask strength from
Okay.
Glenlivet. Our master distiller at the Speyside Distillery, his father was the master distiller at Glenlivet. I don't know the proof, Adam.
It's about 106 proof.
106.2 proof, okay. This whiskey is going to have the exact
Well,
same
you won't finish yours. So.
flavor profile of the Glenlivet, except much bigger in flavor. Because atypically, if you look at a 12-year-old Glenlivet from Glenlivet, what they're doing is they're taking a little bit of 13, a little bit of 14, a little 15, a little 16, a little 18, etc., to give it some backbone and flavor and consistency so that it maintains the same flavor profile, bottle 1 to bottle 1,000,001. Whereas with these guys, we're not interested in consistency, we're not interested in anything other than
Nice nose.
what the real distillery tasted at that exact moment.
This is a caramel.
Now,
Still more
again,
flowers.
none of these are caramel, none of them are filtered, none of them are sherried, none of them are, these are all bourbon barreled whiskeys.
That's beautiful.
Thank
now
you.
we didn't
Thanks.
we did not really talk about price levels of all these, but everything after the space side is at least $100, and they run up to maybe $200.
I've seen
or so.
upwards of 250 to 3 sometimes on some of them, but
Well,
they're
this is
worth
what,
it.
That's what we sell them for. I know the most expensive one
Yeah.
is around 200. And the least
These are going to be a
expensive
little
one-
more expensive,
Right.
Adam, I must admit,
Right.
but that's the way it is.
Yeah. And any of these are available, or we'll get them for you at Antioch Fine Wine and Liquors.
In Antioch, Illinois, I guess, right?
Yes. That
Yeah,
would be-
okay, that might help.
This is very spicy. I almost picked
More
up a little
florals.
apple too.
More
No,
floral
but
on it too.
if you recognize regular Glenlivet versus this, you can taste almost like a little bit of like pull on the back end of the finish. So you'll taste the regular Glenlivetness, but this is much bigger, bolder.
It's better.
Thank you,
Much better.
thank you.
Right.
Next
but
thing
for
we'll
somebody
be
who
tasting
really loves
is Glen
Scotch,
Grant.
chill filtering's
That's what we use with Grant's
Well,
Scotch
okay,
whiskey.
but
This is
my-
one of
yeah,
the best
okay.
sellers from our
Can we
Scotch
save this for
tasting.
after, like post-production
Yeah.
discussion, so
No,
we
I'm
can
just
keep this
saying,
moving?
these are all non-chill filtered.
These are
These are all
anything from
cast
Scott's
strength.
are cast
These are cast
strength.
strength.
Yeah.
Unchill filtered, no caramel coloring, 1 cask of each. Now this is Glen Grant, 1977. Now Glen Grant was a,
In case you didn't hear me, this is one of the best sellers from our Scotch tasting.
Was this one?
Was this one?
it's a great little distillery. And this is 1 barrel. Now this is a sherry aged item.
So sweeter?
Yeah, you
A
can smell
little
the sherry.
bit
Sweeter?
Sweeter.
Okay.
You're going to taste a little bit more. I want to say like sugary notes to it versus the bourbon barrel-y type flavor.
Almost raisiny too.
That gives it that figgy,
Like molasses,
almonds. You know, you're going to get a little bit of that also on this.
Syrup.
Now make sure you have the water to these because if you don't, you're cheating your tongue.
This is, by the way, 100 and almost 111 proof.
Okay.
And I like the best about drinking in the basement. We're wrong in most of the rest of our life. We can't be wrong down here.
That's right. it's all up to you.
So from
that's
a-
what it is.
It's
Okay, we're
about 4 or 5 glasses of cast strength. Nobody's wrong.
So we're talking about how much water and flavor profiles and
Correct.
What about temperature? I mean, when you add ice, obviously it gets colder. Some people like Scotch on the
Some
rocks.
people,
or,
okay, there's
talk about
two
temperature.
theories of thought on that. Some of them think like wine, that the colder the wine, the colder the spirit, the less you're able to nose and flavor and taste. I like cold whiskey. All winter long, I keep my whiskey in the trunk of my car so that okay. But and then it also lowers the amount of water I have to add because it keeps it colder. The other thing to do is if you're going to want and you know ahead of time what whiskey you want for that moment and day, what I recommend you do, believe it or not, is take it and put it in the refrigerator for an hour or 2. Literally put it in, get it cold, and then bring it out. Because the problem of putting whiskey in a refrigerator, there's only one problem with that, and that is the cork gets dried out. That's the actual problem, but not if you don't keep it in the
Well, same
refrigerator.
happens to wine bottles. The cork dries out in the fridge.
Exactly.
With that, we're going to remind you that July 30th,
Summer tasting 1 to 5 with hot dogs.
hot dogs, whiskey.
Not this
We'll have
whiskey.
not this whiskey. We'll have some whiskey there. We'll have spirits. We'll have wine and what else do we sell? Wine and beer.
Speaking of fat and wet, can I go to Dunk Tank? Or no?
If you provide the dunk tank, you're
You
more
can
than
be in
welcome
it.
to be in it.
We could dunk at them.
So until next time, we are
Drinking in the basement.